Hey, hello everyone, and welcome to the Crypto Talks podcast. It's me again, Annie Alexander, and I'm very excited to have this, not too planned episode because my tech and everything else didn't work well, so we're a bit late with the scheduled time. But I hope there's no big issues here. You're gonna watch the replay anyway if you're missing it. But I'm very, very happy to have a guest over, whose podcast I've been regularly listening to. So it's really nice to sort of probably for him to be on the other side of the microphone and in the other shoes. So let's welcome our guest today, David Hoffman. Welcome. Hey, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me on, Ani. I appreciate it.
How does it feel to be in the other role?
Oh, I actually love being the guest on other people's podcasts. It's much more easier for me because being the host means that there's a lot more work involved. And when I'm in the guest, I can kind of just like let my train of consciousness go. Whereas a host, I'm trying to get the stream of consciousness out of the guest. And so it's kind of nice being on the other side of things.
Okay, yeah, cool. I was just telling David before the stream that, I usually just free flow. I don't script much. So it's obviously way less professional than what you guys are doing. So it's going to be slightly different. But I hope you'll enjoy it nevertheless.
Cheers.
Okay, so as I mentioned already, David is the co-host of the Bankless podcast, and they also have this popular Bankless. It's just the media. It's the podcast. It's the newsletter. It's a whole thing that grew quite well. So we'll talk about that a bit later. But in the beginning, I guess. Everyone has his own story about how they got into the blockchain space. So what was yours?
Yeah. So I was trying to get into the world of health sciences before I fell down the world of crypto. And I was trying to figure out ways to improve people's lives in the easiest possible way that would produce the biggest possible return on that effort, right? So I was focused in on like mental health. I was also focused on like physical therapy and movement and kinesiology, and then also nutrition. And I thought like these three things, nutrition, physical movement, and mental health, are really simple ways to produce a lot of good for the world. But like that industry was very entrenched and very bureaucratic, and I wasn't really into that. I didn't really want to go and do like 6 more years of school so I could get 2 more degrees so I could like have the legitimacy to help people improve their lives in these different domains. Because if you're going to talk about physical therapy, mental health, and nutrition all in the same job, it's going to be many years of education, and just to get like the stamp of approval, and going through that gamut didn't really interest me. While I was going through that, I fell down the crypto rabbit hole in 2017, got pulled in the same way that many other people do. Like prices go up, people start chatting about it, people's attention turns there. And I got captured by the 2017 bull market. I guess the reason why the difference between me and the average person that got captured by the 2017 bull market is I stuck around. In 2018, I went to the ETH Denver crypto conference and actually met people and like felt the energy of the actual people in the real world, and felt like what that was like, and actually had conversations with people, which was like a treat for me at the time, where I had just been only talking to people on Reddit and on Twitter and only through the internet, right? And so having that wake up, that reality about how there are real people out there with similar aspirations and similar values and similar long-term interests, made me realize that I could go down this path of trying to figure out how to carve out a niche in the world of nutrition, mental health, like movement, or do I do this crypto thing? And the crypto thing didn't have any bureaucracy. It was only a world of builders, permissionless building, if you will. It's like, so if people were just doing the stuff that they wanted to do, and no one was telling them that they could tell them no. And so that interested me, in stark contrast of 6 more years of upper education and debt. Instead, I could just go start doing stuff in crypto, not really sure what, but I could start doing it. And so I started doing it. And then in 2018, I kind of started writing just for funsies. But me writing turned into me writing more, which turned into my first podcast, which turned into my second podcast, which turns into where we are today with Bankless, which is a podcast, newsletter, YouTube, and a bunch of other stuff like community. And that's been my story so far.
It's interesting. When you were telling the story, you didn't mention anything about Lambos and about money and about, the usual thing that you get people involved in the very beginning. So, and you mentioned 2017, which was like the whole crypto boom and the, the wild, wild west times where, I feel like, you could do more without permission and there was like more freedom in that respect. So many people compare this boom with 2017 one. I'm not so sure it's so identical. There are similarities, but I don't think it's the same thing. Like what's when you compare those times, because you've been there and now, what do you think about this?
Yeah, in some respects, they're going to be the same because of human psychology. Like that, while the conditions around these markets are different, like at the end of the day, it's just humans looking at numbers and charts and like being emotional creatures. And so to at some point, like and with crypto and highly speculative industries, this is just how this works. Like at some point, the bear market of like 2018, 2019, and all the way, I guess, through most of the first half of 2020, people were like bearish, but then all of a sudden the bearishness turned to bullishness, and all of a sudden we were bullish. It's not really anything like substantial or meaningful. It just happens. And so like to that degree, the market, the boom and bust cycle of 2017 and 2020s or 2021 is going to be largely the same. Why it's going to be completely different is that 2017 was largely speculating on what is now being reality, but 4 years too soon, right? Like a lot of what we were bullish about in 2017 is coming true. It just is coming true 4 years later. And it was not coming true at the speed that was sustainable back in 2017. And now when in 2021, we have so many different things, especially in outside of crypto, that are so relevant to our industry, like namely money printer go burr, like that's a big one. But also the president of the United States getting deplatformed from a social media company, that's also massive. And we also have conversations of like how Facebook is, accidentally causing civil wars in countries. Like this is extremely relevant. And then we have the Robinhood and GameStop debacle. That's a relevant subject matter. And so all of a sudden, like what the speculation in 2017 was leading to is actually coming into fruition finally in crypto in 2021. But simultaneously on the other side of things, we have society moving closer to needing crypto more and more and more to solve much more of its problems. So whereas 2017 was highly speculative and just 4 years too soon, 2021 seems to be like, oh, we can actually start to bridge the gaps between what society needs and what crypto can offer.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting that you mentioned all these situations, because probably 4 years ago, when theoretically you were talking about possible scenarios and blockchain being a solution, many people wouldn't believe that it could potentially happen, right? So, but now because it's real, it's not a big question anymore, and then it's a very direct correlation to the real events that are happening at the moment, and everyone is kind of being part of it. So it's very interesting. I mean, in 2017, I remember there was this big wave of crypto influencers. They sort of emerged with all their YouTube channels and podcasts. And back then I had a podcast. I mean, Crypto Talks was born back then, but I stopped it because it was very hard to be in the space and to be podcasting without going that route of becoming influencer, because organically lots of projects were coming to you. Even if your numbers were not very big, they were offering you lots of money to cover their project and everything else related to that. Your popularity and credibility and reputation came way later and in a completely different positioning. So you're not, from those crypto influencers who were born back then and are still around, some of them. You're not from the new crypto influencers who are on Twitter, YouTube, etc., who have a same, very similar flavor, let's say. But your positioning is completely different. And I think that's what your strength is about. That's what, why Bankless is, so strong in terms of what you guys do, and probably your audiences have a different quality as well. So was this a strategic decision, or how was that path of
Right.
bringing you in terms of becoming such a strong brand in the industry?
Yeah. So like you said, in 2017, having a good brand was scarce. Everyone got corrupted by like the insane amounts of money there was
Yeah.
floating around the space, right? And even the most honest, legitimate individual, there's a price tag on on everything. And even the most legitimate individuals got bought out. And because the amount of money sloshing around was too much to ignore. And obviously it left a bad taste in everyone's mouth, especially some of the deepest Ethereum community members, some of the deepest Ethereum builders who really got turned off about the whole notion of price and value in the first place. And so there's also kind of this rejection of price, which I actually thought was actually too much in the wrong direction, right? Like in 2017, there was too much talk about price. And then in 2018 and 2019, there wasn't enough conversation about price. Specifically, in my opinion, Ether, the asset, which is the thing that secures this economy. So there's very much this balance between talking about price and talking about number go up for good or for bad. And striking that balance isn't always easy, but I definitely think that is something that me and Ryan have definitely tried to play with on the Bankless show, because admittedly, I came into 2017 because of prices were going up. I came in here to make money, and I'm still here to make money. This is part of the crypto industry. The crypto industry is about money. It's in the name, cryptocurrency. So we can't ignore that. At the end of the day, if an industry is about money, you can expect a lot of clamoring for attention and number go up, right? And so, and this is something I'm pretty proud about. What me and Ryan have built at Bankless is that the audience that we have accrued at Bankless understands that Ryan and I are trying to play that line of, price first and investment first, and making sure that all the Bankless listeners are informed to make good strategic in positions in this space. We want to, we're about education. And so what else are we going to educate about? Values and numbers go up. At the end of the day, though, Ryan and I have no taste whatsoever for pumping people's bags or pumping tokens. And ultimately, I think that has been we maybe in the initial that we could have started to sell out and start to pump this token and then made a bunch of money. But that's not a long-term game. That's a short-term game. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to make a plant a flag and say it is possible to talk about the valuations of these assets in the space for legitimate reasons, and then accrue legitimacy based off of that. And the fact that our community, who we call the Bankless Nation, they've tapped into this. They've tapped into the fact that Ryan and I have no interest in leveraging our community for financial gain, like how we saw in 2017. But instead, we want to leverage our community to promote the things that we see as intrinsically important for both the Ethereum ecosystem and the cryptocurrency space as a whole, but also for humanity. Because again, there's that meme I'm in it for the money, or I'm in it for the tech. It's about money and tech, and this tech can change the world, and that tech needs to be stewarded into existence. And part of that means that many people are going to be wealthy, and there's good and bad ways to make that wealth. And trying to parse that apart I think has been one of the reasons why people have enjoyed Bankless the most.
Yeah, I totally get that. And I think it's a combination of different things. It's the combination, it's the fact that you're keeping the right balance. It's the fact that you're very transparent about advertising, and you talk about your sponsors, disclaiming that you've been paid for that. It's also the fact about the quality of your guests and the quality of the content itself as well, and how much time and research goes into it. So it's not like a lazy media that just goes out there and repurposes things that they've heard from different places. So I think it's just there are many factors to that. And when you look at what you've built and the philosophy behind it, I mean, you talk about a world, a life without banks. So let's touch on that. I mean, that's the ultimate goal that we're all having, financial independence and financial freedom, and being completely detached and sort of, being having control over our own finances and money. But at the end of the day, because the space has not matured enough as of yet, at the end of the day, even if we are paid in cryptocurrency, even if the cryptocurrency is our preferred sort of asset or financial means that we are accumulating, saving, or interacting with, for daily life, we still need banks, we still need fiat. We at one point we just interact with that. Right. So what do you think, that idea and that purpose of life without banks, right, is it possible, like, ultimately to get there? And if yes, like, when approximately do you expect that?
Yeah, it is 100% possible to live a life without banks. And the way that we get that done is by everyone else also living a life without banks, right? So like most people, when I go and get dinner with my friends or I'm paying them back for whatever, we use Venmo because everyone has Venmo. And because not very many people have like the access to crypto wallets, whatever. As soon as like there's this new Schelling point that emerges where like, well, people will ask themselves, well, should I Venmo you or should I pay you via my Argent wallet, or like or can I pay you to your Ethereum address? It's just a matter of like, are there enough people out there in the world where we don't actually have to touch an intermediary to get this done? And like the concept of a bank, I think, can be redefined much more expansively if we want to get really creative here. Where like Starbucks has over $1.5 billion in deposits into their like Starbucks credit card, like debit cards, their Starbucks apps. And that's just money that they owe to their customers who can buy products at Starbucks, right? So in that way, that's Starbucks as a depository institution, which have credited their depositors, their users, with certain amounts of money. And so the conversation of what a bank is can be made much more expansively to more or less what is an intermediary between one's money. And intermediaries are always inefficient versus systems that don't have intermediaries. If we can make the same results with less intermediaries, that means that more value is going to be retained by the customers and less value is going to be sucked out by intermediaries. Now, intermediaries and businesses aren't inherently bad, but the nature of the evolution of economics at large is to always become more efficient and always reduce on costs and expenditures. And if you can think that if you as a business can replace 2 intermediaries with your 1 intermediary, then that is perhaps a good business. And so the promise of the future promise of Ethereum is that it is the great disintermediator. Right. And so all of the banking layer, all of the financial payments layer can be disintermediated by Ethereum. And eventually this is just going to become to be true because of the natural tendencies of humans to move towards more efficient means of transactions and payments and just overall financial activity. And so not only do I think that it's possible, I think it's inevitable. And the last part of your question is, when will it happen? There was this quote that I'm going to butcher that was something along the lines of like, progress happens like one grave at a time. At the end of the day, we just need the younger people of the world to grow up into being the older people of the world. People being born today, or even I would say people as old as 5 years old today, perhaps, will never perhaps have a bank account ever because they will just use crypto because it's better. And so by the time like this 5-year-old, 0 to 5 years, these people are 20, they won't have bank accounts. And so does that mean 15 years? I think in 15 years, most people won't really be using their bank accounts. Maybe they'll have one, but they won't really need one. And then also between my network of people, between me and Ryan, between me and my other Ethereum friends, when we pay each other, we don't use banks. And so it grows, it starts small and grows outwards, but it also just takes a matter of time. But I would say depending on like whether you're in the crypto industry, if you're in the crypto industry, you are 5 years away from never touching your bank again, maybe just 1 or 2 more times a year. And then the rest of the world, 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, got it. I mean, it sounds really great. It sounds quite optimistic. I mean, I know that many people predict the so-called mass adoption in different terms. Many people were so optimistic that they thought it would have happened already. We're not there yet, but we'll see how it goes. You mentioned intermediaries, and obviously, like, the whole concept of the blockchain is getting rid of intermediaries, and it's all about peer-to-peer and all the beauty that comes with it. What do you think about institutions in the blockchain space who are acting as intermediaries? For example, centralized exchanges, right? I mean, they are doing pretty well, and probably for the new entrants to the market, they are easier solution at the moment. So what do you think? Like, are they gonna disappear as well? Because, like, the space philosophically is probably not about that. And how do you see the future about those institutions?
Yeah, so like I like to model them as service providers, and I really see them evolving into more like white glove type services, because they're naturally going to always charge higher fees than what these DeFi protocols can compete with. They will not be able to compete with the fees of DeFi protocols. Granted, Ethereum needs to figure out its gas fee situation, but centralized exchanges should always, in theory, always have higher fees than a Uniswap or a balancer or something native to Ethereum, just because, like, the amount of fees that these companies need to charge in order to operate must be higher because of their overhead, right? Like, Coinbase has 1,000 employees, Uniswap has 15. Coinbase has, legal costs and requirements, and Uniswap is code. Like, these costs and expenditures are not going to be the same. So, like, the forces that DeFi have upon these centralized exchanges, I think, will make them have to be really competitive. But at the end of the day, like, some people, especially wealthy people, want other people to do stuff for them. And so that's kind of where I see, like, service providers or intermediaries really facilitating is like, and especially business to business type things where there needs to be more compliance and more slow moving and due diligence, and there needs to be a human on the other side of the line. That's where I see service providers really in the long term fulfilling that niche. Whereas the people of the world, or maybe, Cameron and Gemini, maybe they don't trade on Gemini, or Cameron and Tyler, Winklevoss, the owners of the Gemini exchange. Maybe they don't trade on Gemini individually. And maybe as individuals, when they make a trade, maybe they're doing it on Uniswap. Maybe, who knows? And maybe when they are talking about their business, maybe they're using their exchanges to coordinate business transactions. Perhaps that's how it works. Maybe Ethereum is the land of the individuals, and centralized companies are the lands of business to business commerce. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, got it. I mean, why I'm asking is because I have such an impression that many people just, get this wrong impression that if they have crypto and they are using centralized exchanges, it's they are free from the banks, which is true. But on the other hand, like, the functionality that centralized exchanges are having at that moment is very similar to what banks are having, right?
It's a new bank.
You have an account. Yeah, it's a new type of bank, and just because you are using cryptocurrency as the currency of your bank, of your centralized exchange account, it doesn't really mean that you're bypassing the middleman, or you're just kind of cutting off the bank. You're just replacing it with a probably better version, or a different version of the same thing. I think that there is a misconception there, which is okay if they know it, and it's fine. And as you said, for convenience purposes, and for many people also, I think when we talk about freedom and control over our money, not everyone wants it, because at the end of the day, some people want to blame someone else if something goes wrong, right? So they do want, as you said, they do want a person on the other hand of the line to call and say, what happened? I did a mistake. Can you reverse the transaction? They want someone to be responsible for things so they can have peace of mind and not really worry too much about it. So I feel there is also this balance and the needs of the people. Some people just are not ready yet to take complete control, because with control comes responsibility, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and especially with getting the older generation into Ethereum and Bitcoin and just digital assets at large, I think they're going to be able to understand the value proposition of the crazy world of crypto, but that doesn't mean that they actually want to touch it, right? Like they just want, like my parents use Edward Jones to manage their money, and maybe Edward Jones allocates into Bitcoin and crypto and Ether. And that's really the full extent of how they leverage these platforms. It's just as investment vehicles, but not actually as financial vehicles. The whole point about crypto and like the why Ethereum is like Turing complete, as in like software enabled, is it can do anything. And so it will be able to express whatever people want it to express. And so if people want maximum decentralization, it can provide that to you. If people want an app that is centralized in the back end but then deploys on Ethereum, that can also work. It's really the whatever people want can be expressed on Ethereum. Yeah,
makes sense. I mean, since we touched Ethereum, I think I mentioned this on one of our Clubhouse conversations. When I spoke with Dima Buterin, Vitalik's father, he was talking about the fact that he's really proud that when Vitalik wrote his report on Ethereum results, he mentioned something about the fact that every project has to have a soul. So I know that, it may sound a bit strange because we're in a field which is a very tech field, and kind of technology seems to be the hero of the whole story, which is another question, and I don't think it's the right approach. But anyway, that's how the narrative goes at the moment. But again, like, how do you define that? Like, how do you, when you see different projects, how do you actually feel whether the project has a soul or not? How do you define that?
Yeah. One thing that Vitalik was talking about when he wrote that was about how projects that don't have a soul won't be able to be as competitive as projects that do have a soul. And I think we can all relate to this when, like, we're all going out and maybe we're applying for jobs, and there's one job that's really cool, that's really aligned with what we want to do, and we just think is neat, and we want that job, and we're ready to take a pay cut for that job in comparison to perhaps a much higher paying job that is in a corporate 9-to-5 cubicle, soul sucking, right? Like, there are certain endeavors in life that people want to do. Like, humans have emotions, and these emotions resonate with what we want, and what we want is reflection of our personal values and what we see as valuable in our culture, and what we value ultimately is expressed in our culture. And so when this one company or one project or just body of work is able to pay people 50% as much as a different gargantuan monopoly company, and yet get twice as much work out of those people, it's because that project has a soul, because people want to work for it, right? And we can go and take this all the way back to the concept of both like religion and nation states, and like people create religions and then they espouse those religions because they believe in them. And the same thing with like the early days of like the American Revolution. The British forces who were trying to just control America had Americans outgunned, outfunded, outmanned, but it didn't matter because Americans were fighting for something that they believed in. And so they were fighting harder for something because they cared about it. And so they fought to the tooth and nail, and the British soldiers and ultimately ended up having to surrender because they just weren't interested in fighting as hard for it, because they didn't care as much. They were mercenaries, where other people were zealots. And this is where like the amount of, think of how many Bitcoin podcasts there are. There are like 20 like really good, high quality Bitcoin podcasts putting out free marketing about Bitcoin that Bitcoin doesn't have to pay for. People just do it because they want to do it. And because other people want to consume it, these Bitcoin podcasters can generate income because they're producing content about something they believe in. And then the people are consuming that content about something that they believe in. And all of a sudden we have this economy that's arisen around Bitcoin. And the reason why it's there is because Bitcoin has a soul. And it's the same thing about Ethereum. Ethereum is a platform for allowing the expression of human values and interests. And there's so much free labor that people put into Ethereum because they want that thing expressed. And so this is where the soul comes from. Like people injecting when they wake up in the morning and they go to work and they start to produce something for Ethereum, that's them giving their life forces to Ethereum because it's something that they believe in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's, I think that also refers to all the projects who have a philosophy behind them, who have a story behind them, who have their, big why of why they are doing a certain thing and why they are building that. Because those who don't have that story and they don't really have that core why that everyone is on the same page on, it's very difficult to sort of convince others as well if you yourself are not convinced. So it's definitely, there is a phenomenon in it. You mentioned a few things. I mean, you mentioned Bitcoin. Before that, we were talking about Ethereum, and then you also mentioned fighting. So I wrote an article for HackerNoon yesterday about the fact that unfortunately it feels like we still, in the crypto space, we're still siloed and we still fight with each other about which blockchain is the best one. And then just, we spend so much time and energy defending our favorite blockchain, then, being happy about something bad happening to the other blockchain. And then, the whole kind of drama behind it. And that kind of, leads to the fact that we don't have enough collaboration, co-creation between the groups of people who are, sticking around a certain blockchain and don't want to even listen about the others. And that doesn't really look very well for newcomers because they come in and they don't see any unified opinion about stuff. So how do you feel about this whole environment? I mean, it's not a new thing. It's been like this even in 2017. And, we always had these tribes and groups, and all the people in it are, as you said, they're very passionate. They're all about, whatever they believe in. So things get heated very fast. What's your opinion about this whole environment in general?
Yeah, it's been one of the most funny things to watch about the crypto space, and yet I find myself doing it just like everyone else does it. And I actually don't think it's something that you can really remove yourself from. I don't believe it's actually completely possible to be completely agnostic about which cryptoeconomic system or cryptoeconomic systems are the ones that work, because kind of like how I was saying earlier, not all projects are the same. Like not all cryptoeconomic systems have the same merits. Back in 2017, EOS had this 21 validating set of validators that controlled the EOS blockchain. That's not the same thing as Ethereum's version of decentralized proof of stake. It's not the same thing as Bitcoin miners. That's a cartel of 21 people. And so there is a lot of at stake with what cryptoeconomic system comes into existence, because what one quote unquote wins out can determine the future livelihoods of generations and generations and generations of people that come to be lived and come to operate under the design constraints of these systems. Also, the reason why this space is so tribal is because there's so much money at stake, right? If one cryptoeconomic system survives in lieu of others, well, that means that one cohort of people, their bags didn't do so well, and the other cohort of people, their bags did really well. So there's just money at stake. So the amount of energy thrown into this contest of just infighting, there's a lot at stake. So there's a lot of energy. Now, the reason why I'm okay with this is because of the concept of monetary maximalism. And this actually got pioneered by Bitcoiners, and Bitcoiners figured this out really first before anyone else, is that it's kind of the belief that there can only be one money of the world. I earlier in the podcast, I talked about how cryptoeconomic systems are kind of evolutions of religions and nation states. Really, there's only so much energy in the world that these things can really capture. And while these things do grow the pie, when one pie grows faster than other pies, that means the other pies aren't going to grow as fast. And so while they are net generative, they are still competitive with resources. And so the concept of that Bitcoiners pioneer with this monetary maximalism thing is that these are cryptoeconomic systems in the same way that nation states have to invest in their future and protect themselves with their military and try to optimize their own economy, because if they don't, then their economy will be weak and their defensive forces will be weak, and they might be taken over by a competitor, right? If you don't have strong enough defenses, you might be taken over. And so that's why the security of these systems becomes really, really important, because if the security behind Bitcoin or the security behind Ethereum or any other blockchain isn't sufficient, then they can be attacked. Therefore, you need to maximize security. And if you need to maximize security, you need to maximize the value of your money. And it's really just what money is the most secure monetary system that humans have ever come up with, right? The USA is the most powerful nation, and we have the most powerful currency. That is not a coincidence. And so like Bitcoiners really believe that it's really the most powerful cryptoeconomic network that's going to have the most valuable upside in the asset. And I kind of think that's true. I just think it's true about Ethereum personally, and that's why I'm in the Ethereum tribe. Because I think Ethereum will have the strongest security and therefore the strongest asset. And that will come at a loss of all other cryptoeconomic systems. So like, call me an ETH, like people will say like, oh, I'm an ETH maxi. And like, I get, if that's what your definition is, I just believe in that future version of the world. And so that's where I've positioned myself. And so that, I guess, puts me in the Ethereum tribe. However, I'm still open to the concept of a poly blockchain world. It's just that it's all going to collapse on Ethereum. It's all going to be settled on Ethereum at the end of the day.
Okay, got it. Yeah, interesting. I guess, I mean, since we're touching the crypto culture and, I just, while you were talking about this, I just recalled Twitter, crypto Twitter, and then the memes and, everything else that comes with it. So we're kind of segueing a little bit into this NFT space, which is the big, hot topic in the space in general. And I've heard many different opinions, starting from that it's a bubble and it's crazy, and why pay 2.9 million for a tweet, like it doesn't really make sense, or that the crypto art is ugly and it's not even an art, up to the point that this is the future and you don't really get it, but it's like this, you have to get into it now while it's still new, etc., etc. So there have been many different extreme opinions about this. What do you think about the NFT space?
Yeah, it's got to be somewhere in between those two ends of the spectrums. The NFT revolution is a real revolution. It will actually change the way humans choose to create and labor and transact with each other. However, it could be in its 2017 bubble. And so, like, while I do believe that NFTs are in their like 2017 ICO phase. The reason why ICOs died out and then got replaced by DeFi is because, or DeFi tokens, is because DeFi tokens innovated. I do think that NFTs are going to go through this innovation phase. It's going to go through this period of, what just happened here? Let's pause and reflect. What worked? What didn't work? What's real? What's not real? Where did we trip up? Where did we have our successes? And let's maximize those. Let's maximize our wins and figure out how to make this thing more real. I don't think that's going to take for the 4 years that it took ICOs to mutate into DeFi tokens. I think it's going to happen much faster. Innovation is only happening at a faster and faster rate. And it's easier. And NFTs were the first real thing out of Ethereum that got stuck into the mainstream consciousness in the first place. And so, the Justin Blau, the artist known as Blau, we did a show with him on the Bankless podcast where he talked about how Spotify is a great distribution platform, but he has no idea who his listeners are. Yet when he minted an NFT, he got a list of 60 Ethereum addresses that collectively paid him $12 million. And now he talks to those people. And that's not something that Ethereum or Spotify was ever able to do. He actually knows who these people are now. The people that the artist that paid the artist $12 million, the artist now has a direct line of communication towards, thanks to the NFTs. And so we are actually facilitating artistic innovation at a faster and faster rate, and also artistic reward. That's a paradigm shifting. That's brand new. That is cataclysmic. Is that going to be democratized and accessible to everyone? Yes, in 2 to 4 years, 5 years. It's not where it is today. It's not going to be next year. It's going to take time. But it is a real revolution. It's just going to take time to really figure out the kinks and make these tools more accessible. Scale is also very important because, like, it's one thing if Beeple sells a $69 million NFT and he can pay $200 to mint it. But $200 to mint an experimental piece of artwork is out of the typical budget of the typical artist. And so, things need to be fleshed out. But like the revolution is real.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I really love the idea that it's it brings, probably NFTs are the only part of the blockchain related activities that actually bring non-crypto people in and attract those. And my theory is because I mean, for me, it's a really good is a case study for marketing a blockchain kind of idea, is because they rarely talk about the technology itself. They rarely talk about the blockchain. They talk about
they don't care.
all these other emotions and stories and everything else that comes with it. And people understand that. People understand art. People understand music. People understand the concepts behind it. So it's and they resonate with it. So they navigate towards it. So I feel like, if we can probably in other domains do something similar, then, it will be more attractive and we will be talking the same language with the masses and they will be more inclined to check it out, right? I mean, the other hot topic with NFTs, you already mentioned it, is the DeFi space. Do you think DeFi is getting to a stage where, I mean, in the very beginning, it was very specific and not even like regular crypto people were actually getting it or using it because it was very specific and very complex and not user-friendly. Where are we at DeFi at the moment? How do you feel about it? Like, is it getting more user-friendly? Is it easier to use, easier to understand because a little bit of time has passed?
Yeah, obviously, I'm as bullish about DeFi as the next person. However, for the average individual, there are too many like protocol hacks. There's too much difficulty with getting your bank account money into DeFi. That's a problem. And then Ethereum is just simply not usable, right? And so some of these things just needs to get fleshed out. Like we need to just have more hardened protocols. And then also EIP 1559, I think people keep on missing this very core part about EIP 1559, which is it just eliminates the whole concept of gas for the end user. And so once EIP 1559 is here, there is like the submit transaction button and not the what is your gas fee button. And that is a huge UX adoption for the average individual. That gas makes no sense. And so the eliminating of that is going to be extremely beneficial towards just like making this whole thing more usable. And then the other thing that it takes is roll-up adoption, because roll-ups and things like optimistic roll-ups, DK roll-ups, that's how we get Ethereum to match things like Coinbase or Robinhood in levels of performance. So Optimism is probably going to roll out in April, and then Uniswap is going to be on top of Optimism. And with that, we'll be able to match a Robinhood level of performance, but with DeFi. The other issue is that, well, great, we have Robinhood level of performance with DeFi, but we don't have all the assets that people are familiar with on Robinhood. And that's an even harder problem to tackle. And so like DeFi has this massive uphill battle that it has to find to really break its way into the mainstream. But like I was saying, in the same way that crypto is moving closer and closer to being more facilitative of what the people of the world want, the people of the world are also looking for alternative ways to invest. And so like all of a sudden, like the S&P is not all that interesting anymore. And all of a sudden crypto assets are interesting. And so it's going to take this stitching together where like, we need crypto to behave like legacy products. And then we need people from the legacy world to move into crypto and be more okay with crypto assets. That's just going to take time. I don't think there's ever going to be like a breaking moment like we've recently had with NFTs. But every single month, a very important piece of the puzzle gets laid down, it seems. And so like it's just a waiting game at this point. And the reason why I think that there's this speculative mania ahead of us in 2021 and 2022 is there's going to be some people who have a lot of capital who are going to try and front run that. And so that's going to turn this into a whole speculative bust again. I don't think any like people who are like super bullish on Ethereum and crypto and then trying to get all their friends to get into this like now. It's like, well, your friends probably aren't going to care. Probably not for like another year or so. Well, because like first we need to get Optimism rolled out and all these other scaling solutions, and then we need people to build on those things with their app, with the actual iOS apps to make them usable. And so like this is an iterative developmental cycle that we just need more time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just itching because I really have to make a shameless plug in here because I work at Plasma Finance, and most of the things that you mentioned as a problem we have already solved, and we're working on the rest. So fiat on ramp and off ramp directly to the DeFi, that's already there, and yeah, I mean we're also working on the gas solutions and everything else, and we also have professional tools for that are tailored for professional traders and institutionals, like limit orders and everything else that they are used to reduce the risk. So yeah, just to say that there are projects that are working on it, and there are solutions that are already there, and yes, the UX. I mean, the way we tried to build it was basically to get the effect of ease of use of Coinbase, but with all the advanced tools of the DeFi. And yes, I mean there is a long way to go, but yeah, it's a very important thing that you mentioned. Ease of use is something that is very important, and I personally was very scared of the whole DeFi thing because I thought I would always make something, a big mistake, I will push something wrong, etc. And I think we're getting to an extent where even I'm pretty comfortable using that platform, which is a very big plus. Yeah, I mean, I think we covered a little bit of everything. What I would like you to sort of, as a wrap up and a summary, I mean, we already kind of covered a little bit about the future and, how things are going to develop. Your personal interests, like, that there are so many different directions in the blockchain space, so many different sort of types of projects that are out there in the moment. What type of projects you personally are interested in? Like which ones fire you up? Which ones kind of, have the type of soul that you're willing to give your time and effort and skill set to?
Yeah. I'm hoping that there is a new wave of projects that specifically, how do I want to take this? The whole promise about Ethereum and crypto is disintermediation, right? And between technology and money, those two things are the things that intermediate almost everything about our lives. And so like when you use the US dollar, you're actually using the Federal Reserve as your intermediary because that's the thing that controls the value of the US dollar. When you're using Venmo, Robinhood, your brokerage, Facebook, Twitter, etc., any sort of technology, those are the mediating platforms that mediate between your relationship with, like for me and my Twitter followers, or if I'm on Instagram, me and my friends, which is where me and my friends choose to communicate. That's the thing that intermediates our lives. Now, granted, Twitter and Instagram created those social relationships, and so they were net generative of new social relationships, yet they intermediate them. And so they did something cool, and now they're kind of doing something bad, which is controlling how our relationships are with our fellow humans, right? And like what's even worse about Facebook specifically is like if you have a Facebook page, you have like 10,000 followers on your Facebook page, you can't post something to your Facebook page and get your 10,000 followers to look at it. You have to pay them. You have to pay them money to get that done. That's bad. That's intermediation. And when I was writing about this concept in my article, Digital Cultural Revolution, going back to like money and technology are the two things that intermediate our lives the most. And therefore, those are the things that control our emotional relationships with other people the most. And so, while there's all of these DeFi projects like Uniswap, Balancer, AMMs, money markets, borrowing and lending, like permissionless collateral, self-sovereign financial tools that are just groundbreakingly awesome. Those are really awesome financial tools. I'm looking towards things that, in addition to DeFi, that are perhaps more in the Web3 camp, that disintermediate people's emotional relationships between each other, like artists and creators, transactors, communication of value on the internet. What does it mean if we can change a Reddit upvote to a small penny of value or something like that, where maybe you put in an extra couple of minutes of time into that Reddit comment and somebody really appreciated that? How can we reward that and help facilitate that emotional relationship on the internet? That sector of projects is what I'm hoping really takes forward into 2021.
Which is very hard, because it feels like there were different tries and none of it really actually worked very well. Like Steemit was very similar to what you're saying, and in the beginning it worked pretty well, but then at some point, I mean, something went wrong and it just disappeared, like from the form it was before. So yeah, I mean, I totally like that approach. Me too. I'm more interested in the human side of the technology story, because I think that at the end of the day, the technology and the beauty of it is because it's there in order to bring positive change to people's lives. Whether it's the financial part of our life, whether it's the artistic and creative part of our life, or monetizing our audiences, or whatever it is, it's a different ways of making positive change to the life, and otherwise it's just doesn't really have any meaning behind it. It's kind of at one point it becomes useless. So yeah, I mean, thank you very much for your time and the conversation. I really enjoyed it. I mean, it was a free flow, but I think we we managed to cover a pretty wide range of different aspects in the field. So it was really nice talking to you. Thank you very much.
I also enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me on, Ani.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye, everyone. And definitely watch the replay if you've missed it.